All right, we're going to get going here. Today is Wednesday, April 17. We are here for a continuation of the public hearing on the preliminary adopted budget. First order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe, whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have the roll call. If you would, Susan.
Council President McEntee.
Here.
Council Vice President Marin.
Here.
Councilmember Bergner.
Here.
Councilmember Alley.
Here.
Councilmember Sweet.
Here.
All members of the Town Council are present.
Thank you. All right, I'm now going to turn it over to Vice Chair of the School Committee, Michelle Brousseau, to take the roll for the school committee members.
Ms. Whitford is on her way. Mr. Bradley Shear.
Here.
Mr. James Restivo.
Here.
Ms. Carol Vetter.
Here.
Ms. Melissa Boyd.
Here.
Ms. Kate Massananti.
Here.
And Michelle Brousseau. I'm here. And as I said, Ms. Whitford will be here momentarily.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on now to the public hearing tonight relative to the Town Council's preliminary budget for fiscal year 24-25 as adopted on March 18, 2024. This time I'm going to turn it over to Town Manager Jim Manning.
Good evening. This evening, this is the Town Council public hearing number 2. To my left is the Finance Director, who has prepared a 25-page document that he'll go through very quickly, much quicker than even probably 2 nights ago. And I will go over the first 3 or 4 pages to just give a brief overview on what was required and why we're here. So on page 3, so it's public hearings on the budget. There are 2 public hearings are required to be conducted on the preliminary budget prior to April 18th. First one we did was Monday the 15th. Second one is tonight, the 17th. The final action on the budget by the Town Council shall occur on or before May 1st of each year, upon which time the Town Council considers any petitions received and gives final approval to the final budget by a majority vote of all members of the Council. This is required by Town Council, Town Charter, Article 4, Section 4223. Page 4. This is the fiscal year 24-25 budget calendar. April 2024 has the following 4 dates. Monday the 15th was public hearing number 1. Wednesday the 17th, tonight, public hearing number 2. Monday, April 22nd, 4 p.m. deadline to submit petitions for revisions to the preliminary budget, which requires 25 signatures. Monday, April 29th, consideration of petitions and adoption of the final operations budgets during regular session of the Town Council. The calendar for May of 2024, Monday, May 13th, 4 p.m. deadline for submissions of final petitions for referendum, 200 signatures required. Thursday, May 16th, deadline for petition signatures to be verified by the Board of Canvassers. The June 2024 calendar, Tuesday, June 4th, possible budget referendum on Tuesday following the first Saturday in June. And finally, June 14th of 2024, the town tax assessor sets the tax rate for fiscal year 2024-25 operating budget. Page 5. This is just a brief summary, a synopsis of what this budget has for fiscal year 2024 to fiscal year 2025. There's a proposed 1.29% tax levy increase over fiscal year 2023 and 24. 0.72% proposed tax rate increase to $11.13 per thousand from $11.05 per thousand. Bullet number 3, the net property taxes needed in fiscal year 2025 proposed is $76,997,255, of which $20,703,736, or 26.89% of the budget, is related to town operations. $56,293,519, or 73.11% of the budget, is related to school department operations. Bullet number 4, all funds budgeted is up $2,230,360, or 2.12% compared to the fiscal year 23-24 adopted budget. So the total budget in fiscal year 25 would be $107,244,335 versus fiscal year 24, $105,013,975. One thing I'd like to note on that, what was the driver that raised it up 2.12% or $2.2 million? It was the obligations by the town to the collective bargaining agreements that were negotiated into the union contracts. The vast majority of that number. Brian will go over that, I think, on page 11 of this document. The last bullet, the school department will be level funded of their local appropriation from the prior fiscal year at $55,994,773. From page 6 on, I will turn it over to our Finance Director, Brian Sylvia.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening. Page 6 is the preliminary adopted budget that was adopted by the Town Council on March 18th, 2024. This is a summary of the changes or amendments that were adopted by the Town Council that evening. There was a shift of $600,000 or a reduction of $600,000 for current year taxes and a subsequent increase of $600,000 for the use of fund balance. On the expense side, $171,050 was reallocated to human services and outside agencies. I almost forgot that again like Monday. That was a summary of the changes that were enacted on page 6 from the preliminary adopted budget. Page 7 is a review of the property tax roll. This is currently what is being projected is an increase on our tax roll of $39,202,304. That is an increase of 0.57% off of the current levy. This would result, off of the current tax base. This would result in net property tax of $6,938,966,504. Slide 8 is a review of the tax rate and a breakdown. At the top, you can see these numbers were actually mentioned previously by Jim, but property tax need, you'll see the $20,703,736, or 26.89% related to town expenses or town operations, and $56,293,519, or 73.11% related to school operations. This again is the operations of both and then a divide amongst the debt service of each to arrive at these numbers. Overall, the levy would represent $77,222,273. That is an overall increase of $979,879, which is again an increase on the levy of 1.29%. I jumped past it in the middle of the page, but the breakdown on the rate for fiscal year 25, you'll see $2.99 for the town and $8.14 for the school to get to the $11.13. That is overall an 11-cent increase on the town side and a 4-cent decrease on the school side. To further break down the tax analysis, property tax revenue analysis, on page 9, on the first column towards the left, you see the December 31st, 2023 assessed value. Excuse me. This is what was noted a few slides earlier. This is what we're assuming right now and what I'm receiving right now from our tax assessors, the $6,938,966,502. You'll see the next column over, the proposed rates at 1113 and 1105 for the tangible. Those would, when doing the math over, that would equate to the levy of $77,222,273, which again is an increase of $980,130, which results in, as noted, that 1.29% levy increase. And when accounting for overlay and abatements, the actual property tax revenue within the budget would be noted as $75,680,557. And as noted on the bottom portion of the slide, 1 cent on the rate would equate to $66,970. The next slide is a 10-year look back or 10-year history of the property tax rate and allocation history. The bottom slide, you'll see again the breakdown for the current year that is proposed, 26.89 for the town, 73.11 for the school at 11.13%. I'm sorry, 11.13 overall levy of $77,222,273 for a levy increase of 1.29%. And again, over this 10-year period, the average has been 1.88% on the overall levy increase. Excuse me. The all funds budgeted. So this is all funds that are budgeted of the town, and that is going up a proposed $2,230,360. That's an increase, proposed increase of 2.12% to an overall total of $107,244,335. General fund revenue and expenses. General fund overall is being proposed at an increase of 5.56%. or an increase over the prior year of $1,714,327 to an overall proposed budget of $32,539,245. This is another way to look at the same information. This is, again, the general fund. It's just a different look. This is page 13. This again notes that, I noted this Monday night, I want to note that again. Wages and benefits combined represent 76% of the budget. And when you add in capital, so just wages, benefits, and capital outlay represent 84% of the overall town general fund budget. Fund balance. Fund balance is being proposed at fund balance use, I'm sorry, the use of fund balance or fund balance applied is being proposed at $1,793,608. That is an increase of $750,000. If you don't mind, I'd like to answer the question I got on Monday night, if I could. There was a question raised Monday night on fund balance. This was related to a page 83 in the budget. I just wanted to draw a little more attention to that. So that was within the fund summary section of the budget. In the fund summary section, and within the fund summary section, if you go to the use of fund balance, there was a question raised related to beginning fund balance, and it was noted as $41,236,558. This one, I'll be honest with you, kind of threw me for a loop on Monday. Typically, when discussing fund balance, usually you either talk about the general fund balance or the unassigned fund balance or all funds. And this was somewhere in the middle, so I wasn't sure what this number was representing at the time. So it took a little research, and it was my doing. So I'm still learning on ClearGov as it is. There's a section in ClearGov that is data. That's where you can build some of the graphs you see within the budget. That's where I enter the debt service, and you can see some of the graphs and graphics on debt service. I also entered in all funds budgeted, just our fund budget, just the funds related that we have budgets for. I entered in the historical data for debt service. So that is not all of our fund balances. That is just fund balances related to the debt, the funds that we budget for. That doesn't account for what did I reference the other night, like the school trust funds and a lot of other funds that we don't actually budget for. So this isn't encompassing everything, it's a piece of it, and that is actually the true number. Most of these funds are obviously encumbered for other things, and they're not the unassigned fund balance. These are encumbered funds for things like capital funds or operations of wastewater, operations of water. So they actually are a true number. That is, the 41 million is the fund balance, all in, assigned, committed, non-spendable, what have you, of all of our budgeted funds. That does represent the 41,238,000. It really didn't need to be there. When I was putting that into basically the background of the budget, I was again looking to do some spreadsheets on each individual fund, how the trend of those fund balances going. I didn't anticipate it going into the budget on where it was. So that's something I'll have to correct going forward, but that is the origin of that number. Yeah,
So I think I'm on that page.
okay,
I'm not really very familiar with ClearGov and how to navigate it, but if you click on fund summaries and you scroll down, you eventually come to a chart.
Yep.
And so all funds, general fund, school fund, Peacedale office building, am I in the right chart?
yes.
So I don't see the number that you have. Where's the 41,238?
Do you want me to just?
Yeah. So I just want to see if it's hard to navigate this software. And so I just want to make sure I'm looking at what you're looking at. Sorry. Okay, so maybe it's another screen. Oh,
Brian,
by
is it in here?
No.
Okay.
Revenue source.
It's the PDF version of the website. That's a condensed version of the budget. Condensed instead of 200 pages.
I have 42,123,690.
Is that?
That's not what you said.
41,236, 558.
I'm just looking to match the number, but I don't see it at all. I'm gonna go one more time. I don't see it. Okay, well, this is not very easy software to use, even if you know what you're supposed to be looking for, so I'm not sure where that is.
It's on the PDF version that's on the website.
Okay, let me try. Thank you. PDF version on the website.
On the next slide, slide 15, that is our year-end projections for the current fiscal year 23-24. On the expense side, we are projecting to come in at just over 98% of our budgeted allotment. The budget was adopted at $30,824,917. The town is projecting to finish the year at $30,230,074 on the expense side. On revenue, same adopted budget, and the town is projecting to come in over budget by $1,878,422, or a net result of just under $2,473,265. Excuse me. The next slide, slide 16, is related to the school department. What has been preliminary adopted at this time is the 2025 preliminary number. That is the overall number of $62,635,680. As I noted on Monday night, the school committee has taken action on their budget after that, and we'll have to take action at the adoption on the 29th to bring the department amended in line with the town's budget. The department amended has now been brought to $62,458,664, or a reduction of $177,015. Peacedale office building is proposed for an overall increase of $1,326, or 1.24%, to $107,959. Senior Services is proposed for a reduction of $21,999, or 3.01%. That would result in a budget for FY25 of $707,842. Next on slide 18 is the Neighborhood Guild. Neighborhood Guild is being proposed for an increase of $87,562. That would represent a budget for fiscal year 25 of $960,722. Next up is the Rec Center, Community Rec Center. That is being proposed for an increase of $75,504 and an overall budget for fiscal year 25 of $784,717. Next is the Debt Service Fund. The Debt Service Fund is being proposed for a decrease of $117,614 to $1,797,772. And the next slide is the balance of outstanding debt. So the third from the right, the balance outstanding as of June 30th, 2023, that corresponds with the most recent audit that was released for June 30th, 2023, and the balance outstanding at that point on existing debt is $15,841,002. At the close of the current fiscal year, the outstanding debt for existing bonds would be $14,339,000. And finally, the last column to the right is what would be the existing balance at the close of the fiscal year that we're discussing at this time, June 30th, 2025. And that would be a balance at that time of $13,014,000. And the next slide is the Water Enterprise Fund. Water Enterprise is being proposed for an increase of $65,500 to $1,329,151. Next is the Wastewater Enterprise Fund. That is being proposed for an increase of $276,711 to $5,344,942. And finally, Solid Waste Enterprise Fund is being proposed for an increase of $149,044 to $1,036,306. With, again, the next action on the budget being April 29th.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions from council members here? Yeah, I got a question for the school part too. I'll just kick one off here. All right, Ryan, this one's for you. All right, I'm looking at slide 16 here. We're talking about a reduction in the school expenditures from adoption of the preliminary budget, March 18, about a month ago, to tonight, I'm guessing. And it looks like a change of 177, or is it a reduction of 240? It looks like the capital outlay reduced by about 240. Can you talk about this?
Sure. So on March 12th, the committee adopted the revised budget at $62.4 million. So originally in the budget they adopted prior to that in February, I had $177,000 of fund balance applied to go towards the West Kingston parking lot, but instead we just moved that from the operating fund into the capital fund. That was the revision.
All right, so is this like so it actually is a change in expenditures here?
Correct.
But you moved it from CIP to the operating budget? Walk me through this again so I can
Moved it
understand.
from operating budget into CIP. So I could say arbitrarily had it in the operating budget. I should have just had it in capital because it's a capital project.
Okay, so you reduced your expenditures, allowing your unassigned fund balance to increase, and then you assigned it from there to capital outlay?
Let's put it this way. We had, our unassigned fund balance was about $2.9 million minus encumbrances. We ended up about just over $2 million, $2,091,000. We decided to take about $1 million, $1.1 million, and apply it to the capital fund for next year. 177 of that in the original budget adoption I had in the general fund as a revenue source and as an expenditure so that they balance, and that was all going towards the West Kingston parking lot. So instead of having it in the operating fund, I just moved it right over to the capital fund.
All right, so reduced revenues, reduced expenses, and you just applied to the CIP from the unassigned fund balance?
Correct, exactly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You got it.
Last year, you had these, 2 schools were closed and it should have had a savings of $1.5 million. How was that money spent? Because there was no savings.
Yeah, my understanding is that essentially the savings that they realized from closing the schools were applied to cost increases for the fiscal '24 budget, essentially. So you call it break even, call it a wash. So it allowed us to absorb the cost increases for fiscal '24.
Are those going to be ongoing? Do you expect those increases every year? Or is this just a one-time
Oh, I mean, we expect cost increases every year, yes, absolutely.
in this range, you think?
It depends on a number of factors.
Like what?
Primarily transportation, out-of-district tuition, and salaries and benefits. That's 92% of the budget, so.
Yeah, okay. On the CIP, I know there's a couple of ways to figure it. One of them is 3% of the total budget, and it looks to me like it's only half that, maybe?
Sure, if you're only looking at the CIP fund, but we also have those expenditures in the operating budget. So we'll definitely hit that 3% target, for sure.
Okay.
Yep. And thankfully, RIDE will coordinate with us to make sure that we do.
You saw? That's not a bad thing. Going forward, there's $32 million worth of work that needs to be done in the schools other than the high school. I know that's going to be handled through the CIP, and I also know that RIDE will kick in something for that, so I know you guys won't be responsible for 32 million of it, it'll be something less. How is that going to be handled going forward?
That's a great question. There's a number of strategies we could pursue. What some other districts do is they set up a revolving capital fund, and they have an agreement with the council that the housing aid gets deposited into that fund every year, and then the school can use that for capital projects. There's some other state and federal grants we could pursue. The savings, if the bond passes, the savings from electricity and the efficiency from the new building, we could potentially apply those savings in the budget towards the maintenance expenses for those other buildings as well. It's going to depend on a number of factors.
You have a 5-year period, though, to, Kate might know this, a 5-year period to get the 55% funding from RIDE for repairs, or possibly 55%.
You mean from the reimbursement from the state? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I believe so.
That sounds right. Sounds right.
And so we're clear, when the housing aid comes back to the town, it comes back to the town. It doesn't come to the schools, which is to his point when he said to set up that capital improvement revolving fund so that it can go into there, so that it can just be cycled back into capital improvement projects, because the schools are responsible for paying for our own capital improvement.
Right.
We don't tap the town for extra money.
Right.
And this would be a great way to work together to make sure the rest of our buildings do get the attention they need.
Okay. Any idea of what you'd have to ask for an increase to cover whatever your part of the 32 million would be, no matter how it's financed?
You mean asking for a property tax transfer increase?
Yeah.
Oof, it's tough to tell. I think the only way to reasonably make it work is to decrease the operations, to increase capital expenditures, and that would be relatively difficult.
Can I just ask a follow-up on that quick?
Sure, yeah.
Is that why you use the strategy here to reduce your capital outlay, to shrink your budget, but really you're just spending more through CIP? I'm trying to get an understanding. Why'd you shrink the amount used through the expense amount of capital outlay and really just fund it through CIP allocation?
Sure, so I'll tell it to you like this. Essentially, we added up all the expenditures for next year, and they came to about 62.4 million, as opposed to the same amount as this year, 62.6 million. So all of our expenditures covered at 62.4. So the strategy was, well, what if we just kept the bottom line the same? That means we would just use some fund balance to keep us at 62.6, but that fund balance would go towards capital. Well, it doesn't really make sense to have that in the operations budget. We should just have it in capital.
Well, why not move it all to capital? You still got 285 going through that capital outlay through the budget here. I'm looking at slide 16.
Slide 16.
Expenditure
Help me out.
statement says capital outlay. I interpret that to mean it's an
Oh, sure.
expense item on your expenditure statement?
Correct, yes.
You said you moved 240 of this out of there so you could
No, no.
allocate it towards CIP. Reduce revenue, reduce expense, bring down shrink the budget to an extent, at least semantically, and then allocate the money through CIP. Why not do that with all of the amount here?
So if I were to pull up those object codes, essentially, those are like maintenance items. Those are items that are going to expense next year, not capitalize. Right.
All right.
They're maintenance expenses. Yep.
And what's the practice you use by which you account for it as a maintenance expense versus a capital by which it's not expensed through, such that it's an allocation from the unassigned fund balance?
Sure. If I understand South Kingstown's rules, it's purchases less than $10,000, useful life of less than a year, something
Okay.
along those lines,
All right.
roughly.
So everything
Getting help
inside
from that.
this capital outlay line item are items which are less than $10,000.
Potentially, yes.
Potentially, it should be though, right?
Yeah. I'd have to
You
look
can
at all the-
corroborate that, verify, yeah, it is?
Yes, sure.
You're the CFO of the schools, I'm asking you.
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
all right. Go ahead.
Do you have some? Because I can come back. Go ahead and ask. It's okay.
Okay, this is a little bit of a different tract. So on Monday night, we learned that the schools could potentially save about $1 million, right? So I go back to my regular life and I think about that, and I think, well, it could be more, Deb, or it could be less, because we don't really know. But what happened in my head was I thought back to 2020, when the last time the schools saved $1 million, and the community wondered how they were going to do something with it. We had a referendum, and some of us were here paying attention and voting, and that referendum barely failed by 34 votes. So the schools saved $1 million, and we weren't clear on how that money was going to be used, so that generated a referendum. And referendums are divisive, people get very upset, it's very traumatic, and I don't want to do that. So I want to talk about what we could all do with that $1 million savings. So
Well, I just want to pause. I don't recall hearing there'd be a $1 million surplus.
I believe, she asked me about my year-end projections on Monday night, and
Yeah.
I gave a rough projection of about $1 million
Oh, you do anticipate about $1 million in
Yes.
surplus?
as of Monday night, yes.
Okay.
So I just spend a lot of time thinking about things, and so wondering if you're going to save $1 million, right? We did talk about you want to put it into your reserve fund and replenish. Remember, you even did the math. You were like zip, 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 1.9.
Yeah, but I'm talking about revenues in excess of expenses creating a budget surplus. Are we
Correct.
talking about the same thing?
Correct.
Yes.
Exactly
Okay.
right. Yep. Yeah, so we
Because it
don't
seems
so we
like-
don't conflate categories, right? A budget surplus is what you said, revenues in excess of expenditures. Fund
Yes.
balance is accumulated surpluses, assets minus liabilities as of any given
Okay.
point in time. Yep.
So you anticipate that you'll have $1 million budget surplus by the end of this fiscal year that we're currently in?
Yes.
Correct. That was my 50% confidence level.
Right.
Okay.
So you could have more or you could have less.
Correct.
But you're basically, last year, you didn't think you were going to, not you,
Sure.
but those who
Yep.
were there didn't know. I don't even think you were here, Bob. You weren't here either.
For the record, I was not.
I know you weren't here either. Right, I understand.
I wanna be clear on that.
Others in those chairs weren't sure what it was. It ended up to be money, over $1 million, and it got reabsorbed into the budget. But now you're saying,
Just to clarify, the final audited surplus was $255,000.
right, because you used we had all this discussion and needed to fund the salaries?
We ended up with a $250,000 surplus at the end of last year. What we had was $280,000 at the end of June, but the books weren't closed yet. So other expenses still had to be either paid or accrued. That happens in July. So that 680 went down to 250. You don't add them together. That's not the way it works.
I'm not
Six-
adding them together.
I
I don't
know.
think I am.
I know,
Tell
but
me if I am.
that's out on social media, and it's not the way it works. So that 680 was not the final numbers. Ryan is expecting 900,000. As of today, our potential surplus. And the takeaway, and I think where you're going, and because I want to get there.
Okay.
We had a subcommittee meeting yesterday, and we would like to bring forward to the whole committee that any surplus is earmarked for capital, because that's the needs. That's what we have done with 1.16 million out of our fund balance going into next year. If we end up with that 900,000, if we're lucky enough, again, we won't know until we have audited numbers what that really is. But I think it is a great plan going forward to have any surplus go back into fixing our other buildings, to go to that 32 million. So, I mean, we're all on the same page here. That's what's so great, because we agree. We should be paying, surpluses are good. That means we're managing our money well. And then we take those surpluses and reinvest them in our buildings. And so, but I think we're all on the same page.
Can I ask a follow-up there?
Yes, you can.
Ryan, what are the drivers leading to this anticipated surplus?
Great question. I'll pull it up for you. Here we go. All right, so as of right now, we've underspent in salaries. So we have a few open positions. So we have a one-on-one teacher's assistant we have to hire. We'd like to hire the maintenance director, assistant maintenance director.
So is that about 10 positions?
No, that's 2 positions. That's 2
That's only 2?
FTEs. Yep. And then you have the benefits attached to that as well. As of right now, we've underspent on some purchase services. So that's a social worker that we did not contract with. We underspent on supplies, about $230,000, and we still have not completed some capital projects, or some maintenance projects rather, that are in the queue, essentially, to the tune of about $114,000.
All right, so you've effectively held back on some spending, or you found areas to sort of cut out as unnecessary?
So essentially, yeah, it's exactly a combination of both, potentially.
Okay.
Yep. We still have transportation for spring athletics and through the rest of the year for gen ed. We've had some special education out-of-district enrollments as well. Things of that nature.
All right.
It's escaping me right now, but it's a number of factors.
Thank you.
So, can we talk, Carol? So, I really appreciate explaining to the community what you would do with the surplus. And I think, inspires confidence and trust in the elected officials. So I think that's important, that if there were savings, all of this, if you go back to the original slide that Jim talks about the timeline, go back, click a few, and it talks about the budget meetings, okay? So this, right there. So Monday the 29th, the consideration of petitions and operations of the budget, that's April 29th. Something very important happens on May 7th, and that is before the deadline of May 13th for petitions. So that's why I started to think about all of these things and go, it's very important that if we want to have people have confidence that we're going to use their money in the most responsible way, we need to communicate that so people can feel confident about the projects, right? We could take that 900,000 and say, if the bond passes, we could put it in the bond reserve, whatever that fancy fund is, that we could have, right? And I don't want to be the only asking of you. I can hear other people saying, well, what could you, as the town council, contribute to that bond? Here's Melissa, that's for you, right? Exactly. What would we contribute? And I would want to see, we know that Brian talked about 1.4 million because of the investments, and we only took, even Greg's nodding now, we only took 600,000 and reduced it by a couple cents. What if we did some hard work together and said, we'll give what you give, like, and I've been trying to do the hard work and get us to all say, like, how can we be more confident so that this bond is not so expensive? This project isn't so expensive that people don't want to vote for it because they can't afford it. So I'm just trying to get some inertia here.
So are you talking about creating a revolving fund toward the other schools, or are you talking about creating a amount of monies to apply to the debt service to reduce the impacts from that?
The second one, I
Okay.
think. As we ramp up for the bond, right?
Currently, the town has a fund balance within the debt service fund, and which can be applied to debt service payments. Right now is approximately 2.2 million, which we're projecting to use during the rollout strategy of the bond. I believe you're referring to that.
Right, so we have like $2 million, and we're gonna try to grow it. That's why the years 1 to 5 have that gradual step increase, so we get to 7 million, it's our payment, our share of the payment, right? And then go forward for the next 15 years, if I understand it correctly?
Correct.
So we could do any combination of things. Like I'm trying to, Monday night, Melissa said, well, what are you, not this plain speaking, but what could the town contribute is what Melissa Boyd said, right? I'm not want to speak for you, but I do think that you have the opportunity, and we have the opportunity to make this a project less painful to the person who's paying for it, and that's all of us. So I don't know how, it seems like people didn't realize that there was a surplus, and then we definitely are going to have a surplus, and we could do some hard work together. So.
All right, so just want to ask hold on, Bob. So, based on what she said there, I know you guys have made representations tonight that with the anticipated budget surplus and any surplus in the future, you intend to apply it toward CIP at the remaining schools?
So I just want to clarify, we had a subcommittee meeting where we talked about that option. Nothing has been decided at the school level or the school committee level, because the first time we heard about a surplus was Monday night also. So, I mean, we're still absorbing this information, but Deb's right. I mean, a surplus is great news. We could decide to put it towards fund balance. I'm sorry, well, you could do that. You could apply it to debt service. You could apply it to maintenance on our other buildings. I mean, there's options on what you can do with the surplus. I do want to caution, we don't know if it's a real surplus till we get audited numbers, but these are great discussions that what we want to do with an anticipated surplus.
Yes, so the purpose of this us meeting is to collaborate about each other's budgets. Obviously, nothing is set in stone. We're not making votes tonight. We don't make a vote in our budget until a week from now, or 2 weeks from now, 10 days from now. But while we have you here, at the rare opportunity that we do, because we don't always have you here, we'd like to get an idea as to your intention as a school committee, if in fact you do have a budget surplus, how we use the monies. You made representations, you did, that you likely, or you wish to, or you desire to, at a minimum, spend those monies toward capital improvement at the other remaining schools and take advantage of the potential reimbursement there. Discussion has been made about the possibility of us coming together because we both have surpluses and using at least a portion of those monies, applying it toward the debt service. My question is, do you guys have a desire to do that? It sounds like an interesting thing, and we can obviously discuss more about it, and no decision is made tonight regarding that, but it's something to keep in mind. So, if that were to happen, how would that work? They would take a portion of their unassigned fund balance, transfer it to the town, and then we'd use some of that money and apply it toward the debt service?
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I think mechanically, sorry to steal your thunder, Brian, I think mechanically the way it would have to be done, because we can't technically, per Rhode Island general law, I don't think we can return it to the town. It would be a decrease to the property tax transfer.
Is that technically the only way to do it? I've been on the council where we increased the property tax transfer 1 year, and then the school committee gave us monies back through a transfer.
Okay, fair enough.
Are you
Can
talking
we
about
clarify
2020?
that actually happened that way? Because it was it was a distinctly different superintendent and town manager, so I'm not sure how it actually transpired, so I just would clarify that before we definitively said anything.
All right. And again, this is for talking purposes.
Yep.
Think through, collaborating. Go ahead.
I just want to add something to the conversation. I want to make sure I understand it properly, that let's say we have this, let's just use $1 million as a round number. If the bond passes, we get 50 to 55% reimbursement rate. We spend $1 million on facilities, which, as Mr. Sweet pointed out, are needed. $30-something million are needed. Half of that money comes back in housing aid to the town. So instead of us just spending $1 million on either debt service or something else, we actually turn that million into $1.5 million on things that we need, and that $500,000 is really up to the town how you want to spend it. So we talked about a revolving fund, could be that. You can take that $500,000 and put it towards the bond.
Absolutely.
But if we just take $1 million and put it into the bond without thinking about that 50% the state's sitting on for us, then I think we are actually leaving money on the table for the town.
Just
Very
keep
good
in,
point. Go ahead.
just keep in mind, though, the $32 million worth of work is not going to fall under RIDE's categories of a dry, safe, I forgot what the third one is. Warm.
It is
depends on what it
included.
is.
It is included currently because of the wording because you guys were thoughtful with the wording of the question that is being voted on. So currently, yes, it is. If we fall outside of the time frame, then it would default back to the 35%.
But it's not just the time frame. If you put replace windows, say, I'm just going out and picking something on one of the schools, I don't believe that falls. I don't think that qualifies for any of the bonus points. That's a repair.
I think it's a good point, and we need to be thoughtful about how that money is spent to maximum. While we have that window of 50% reimbursement, we have to prioritize those projects that will get that level of reimbursement. When we talked about HVAC, I would think that falls into that category. So it's part of that very intentional planning we have to do to make sure we take advantage of the 50 to 55% while we got it.
Yeah.
So, Carol, we had this conversation the other day. Tell me, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I misunderstood. So if you take $1 million as your capital project and fix HVAC, RIDE's going to reimburse us $500,000, and it's going to come to the town. So you're spending $1 million and we're earning $500,000? Okay, I just want to say it out loud for the people in the back, right? So people don't understand, and I literally did not understand that until you told me Monday. So that's what you're saying. So you're $1 million in savings that I pray that you have. I hope that you do, so that then you can do $1 million project, and then we would get the $500,000, and we could then pay down the debt with it. We don't have to transfer it back to you. Okay.
Correct, to say it in a microphone.
Are you following me here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
this
So if-
sounds,
It's the best bang for the buck.
great, fantastic.
Right, because
Sounds
it's hard to
excellent.
get a 50, everyone's on. It's hard to get a 50% return. So I kind of was like, right, there's like the claw it from you, right, wrench it from you, right, have a referendum, make everybody mad, one way or the other, right? We take it back, then you can't get the 50, you can't really get we take $1.5 million from you. But you have
Correct.
to commit, see, I would want you commit to use it for capital projects that you could get the most bang for the buck from. And that's what you need to tell the community, that's what they're gonna do with the savings, Greg, not
Right. And
by
that's-
paper.
That's the
right?
conversation we've been having. This gives us the most bang for our buck. You do these capital projects in the next 5 years, you get that 55% reimbursement. What we would like to see is leverage that back to more buildings, then you get more reimbursement to do more buildings. I mean, that's a good strategy. That would be a great way to work together. But at the end, the reimbursement does go back to the town, not us. But we could leverage it to do even more and get more reimbursement. So these are great conversations. I'm so glad we're having them. There's lots of opportunity here, so hopefully we can continue to work together to do what's best.
Excellent. Thank
This
you,
was
Carol.
this was all Monday night at 9 o'clock after the meeting. So I feel like we should have had these conversations all along because I did not understand that. Feel free to, I didn't know it. I didn't understand it in that way. I don't think people understand it in that way until we said it out loud. So I appreciate your
I
time.
think we have to keep saying it over and over and over again until it just becomes widely known. And I think we need to solidify the discussions that we're having in a way that will really engender confidence from all members of the community.
But
I'm not sure if it was the manager or it might have been Luke, but this did come up in the March hearings at some point about leveraging these funds.
Yes, we've talked about it on a couple of occasions. Thank you, Mike.
We talked about PAYGO money, and we did.
Yeah, we mostly
Yes, we talked about that too, but we've discussed this before.
Yes, I feel like we talk about leveraging funds a lot, and it makes perfect sense and it's very exciting. And I really do want people to understand how routinely this is how decisions are made, I think. It certainly, from what I've seen in these meetings.
Hey, Ryan, if this comes to fruition and we do this down the road, it's on you to make sure that budget is tight and that surpluses keep occurring, and that way we have more CIP money, and that way we get bigger reimbursement to apply toward the bond, and everyone will be happy.
I'll do my best.
All right. Bob, what do you got?
No, I was just going to, say a couple of things. As I travel around town in my off hours, and I have conversations about the upcoming school project, one of the questions that is reoccurring is, what are you going to do about the other schools? I'm happy to invest in fixing the high school, but does that mean we're going to be neglecting our other schools? And so our conversation here tonight is about, taking all money that is available to us and spending it on other schools. And we certainly have, in our capital improvement plan, we certainly have multiple projects that have been identified at these other schools that would qualify for state reimbursement, which would in turn generate more funds for us to spend on other schools. And I also want to emphasize, I'm very happy to hear you say, for the record, that managing the budget properly is a good thing, and that there were some positions that were in the budget this year that we were unable to fill because we had no qualified applicants. But also we reaped some savings on our health benefits. We reaped some savings by we over budgeted our out of district tuitions a little bit. We saved money in utilities by accepting a grant at the high school. So we're staying on top of things. I just want to make sure that our surplus is characterized as a good thing. Now, Ryan and I did not build the budget we're operating under right now. We did not. We inherited that one, but we're managing it as responsibly as we can. So I want to make sure that it's characterized as a good thing, and it allows us to invest in our other schools while at the same time we're investing in our new high school.
All right. What do we got to do to keep you, Bob?
I don't think you can afford to keep me, Mr. President.
Well, I do have an idea, Rory. I do have an idea about that. Since the town council can appoint anybody to the school building committee, we could at a future meeting take up an appointment of said Mr. Littlefield to serve on the school building committee, and we could sort of keep him, and you would be free.
Bob, enjoy vacation.
I shouldn't think about things that night. I should just go right to sleep, but I've been on that one.
All right. This has been some good discussion. Anyone else have anything before we open it up? Kate?
Yeah, I do.
Oh.
Oh, go
No,
ahead.
you can go first. Mine is not related to any of this, so you can go.
I want to get back to the 32 million in repairs. How much do you think that the school can put away per year to start doing the work to the other schools?
You mean projecting surpluses every year?
Well, I look at it this way. If you got 5 years to qualify for the maximum, which you got 5 years, 32 divided by 5 is 6-ish.
Just over 6, yeah.
If you're only talking about $1 million a year, and if the state gives 500, which I think might be a little high, how do you plan on getting the rest of the money to do it in the time frame to get the 55%?
I mean, it's a great question. I guess it's, just to clarify, it's my understanding that the 32 million in repairs is not required repairs. Is that a true statement or no?
It was a general list of repairs. They're not necessarily the top, like, there are like 5 categories, right? And number 1 are your top, and 5 are your nice to have. So it is a list of all of those things. The idea is over the next 5 years, and quite frankly, it's like our CIP it's 5 years, but we review it every year. So it's always 5 years, right? So it's always rolled out.
Yep.
And I would assume that's how we would continue to do this. This number wasn't like, you must fix these 32 million now or your schools are going to fall apart, right? These are recommended.
Correct.
And it's just how a school, and quite frankly a town, because they're your buildings, we just use them and maintain and help work together to do that. And so that, I think, is why this discussion is super important, and I'm glad you ask it, because we need to work together, town councilors, school committee members, because I can tell you, I know I won't be sitting here 5 years from now, God willing, somewhere else.
That's easy to do.
My last name may no longer be Massananti if I am. But no, in all seriousness, though, it is something we have to work together, because we can't just say, okay, year 1, we're going to do X, Y, Z, and year 2, we're going to do A, B, C. We can't project that. But we need to, year over year, come up with a plan every year for our CIP projects.
Yeah, my ultimate point is you're going to have to ask for the money. I mean, savings is one thing. But there's going to be an ask.
But Greg, there's 9.4 million in PAYGO too that we haven't considered. There's lots of things we haven't considered. We have to have more conversations. And I think, there's lots of opportunities, and we have an opportunity to get a 55%, 52 to 55% reimbursement if we do these in the next 5 years. So maybe that PAYGO, and then that 9, you get 50% back, becomes, 13, and that becomes, so you can leverage it if we do it sooner rather than later. And to Kate's point, we're not going to do 32 million in 5 years. That's not the goal. The goal is to prioritize what can get done, the most important, what we get the highest reimbursement for, all of those things, to come up with the 5-year capital plan.
Yep.
And we asked at our subcommittee meeting for Ryan to start looking at that, to get together a real good list and priorities of what the greatest needs are. But also we have to, if this bond passes, we have to be very thoughtful about the reimbursement rate too. But this is opportunities. This is all good news for our town.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I think it needs to be looked at carefully. Like the PAYGO money, that's seed money to start the project. That's the intended use of the PAYGO. So it's pay the architects, maybe put a shovel in the ground, but it's going to get everything all set to start the building.
So it's seed money, but yet you're bonding for it. So you have opportunity on how you spend it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, the person from RIDE told me that the intended use of that was to start the project, cover the
Well,
cost.
all right, but there's flexibility there, and we know that. We've talked about this at several meetings. We understand that to be the case. Go ahead. You got something?
Just to follow up on Kate's point, back when I was sitting at that table, part of our conversation was that the CIP program is set out over a period of years, and it is essentially partly triage, deciding which ones are which projects, which needs are the most important, year by year by year, and those are going to change year to year. I remember having a conversation with Brian Mahoney about how long it took to get LED lighting conversion was years, because there was a decision that it didn't meet the highest priority. So not everything is going to get done in 5 years, and it's never been intended to do so.
Do you have a program, I'm not sure who to address this to take care of the worst problems first? I mean, do you know what you want to take care of first? Not just the high priority as far as need, but also to get the 55% reimbursement.
Sure, we have a long-term capital plan with a number of projects on there, and we'll pull some to the left as needed, or we'll push some to the right as needed.
But you know which ones will qualify for the 55%, and you move them to the top?
Absolutely, yeah, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Can we go back to the PAYGO part? So there's a couple of ways that I understand it, and someone can tell me if I'm misunderstanding. I'm happy to be have a misunderstanding. We were told that the project, they hope that the high school will come in at 135. We have many choices of what to bond. Every dollar amount all the way up from 135 to 150 if the project comes in at 135, correct? Right, that's one variable. The next variable is what to do with the $9 million in PAYGO, or whatever, if it's less, if it's 135, I have no idea. I'm assuming it would be less. We could, if you get the PAYGO money, you could pay down the bond and
reduce the bond amount.
Yeah, reduce the bond amount and have less of a tax impact. There's many things that we can do, right, to make it more palatable for the people, because we literally are spending the other people's money. It's not what we would do for ourselves. You have to think about the unseen person and what they would, want us to do. So we could do that as well, correct? Right, Brian? I guess I'm asking you.
Yes. Speaking to our financial advisors, he's Steve Masseroni, I believe he's been in the chambers before.
Yeah.
He's working with a number of communities that are going through a very similar process right now. And the typical trend is either, with the PAYGO amount, either you lower your need in terms of issuance. So if it would say the bond was 150 million, you bond 141 million, or you take that 9 million and put it towards other capital projects of the school department. Those are really the two most prominent options for the PAYGO funds.
Would this be equivalent to a consumer buying furniture and delaying the first payment for like 6 months, something like that, or buying a car where you put like no money down and essentially they're making the payment for you for the first 6 months? The finance company is sort of like that, or not really?
I'm trying to think of an analogy.
But the PAYGO money, to go back to that, that's a council decision at some future council, like in a year or 2027, when we do the first band?
It would be a council action when it comes to issuing the debt. You would have the option at that time, again, I'm just making the assumption the project comes in at 150 million. You'd have the option at that point to bond the 150, and you'd have that 9 million to put towards other projects, or you'd have the option to bond 141 million and use the PAYGO to pay down the obligations.
And Brian, we won't know the amount to bond until about November 2024, is that right?
That's my understanding from Chris Spiegel, yes.
Okay.
But we will know the price of the project in June?
You'll have the construction manager at risk with the, it's contagious, Brian, where we have the maximum cost locked in.
So we'll know in June if it's 150, 145, whatever it is, 130, 135 I'm going with. So,
we'll know the costs in June? But the
yes.
agreement with the contract manager where he absorbs risk of loss is not till November?
The contract manager, construction manager at risk gives the price of the project, and it can't exceed that.
In November?
But he doesn't execute that
In
till
June.
November?
In June.
The terms with RIDE are that we have to have that contract signed, committed by June 30th. Otherwise, our window of opportunity is gone, and any project in the future will most likely revert back to the 35% reimbursement.
But that's only if they don't issue another $250 million bond, the state.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough, but,
Can you repeat that, please?
they could also just as well issue another 10-year moratorium on reimbursing school construction projects.
Because we actually made out better, I don't want to say waiting, but having the last plan fail, because we went from 103 million that they were going to give us, they would fund half of it to a 117. So we actually did better by waiting.
Except the price of everything went higher, so.
Yeah.
But also to Bob's point, we had a 10-year moratorium on reimbursement from RIDE. All schools did in the state of Rhode Island, which is a large reason when people ask why haven't you maintained your schools. That played a big piece. But Deb, to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, I think that's why these discussions, when people are like, everything's so up in the air, there's no definitive numbers, it's because there isn't and there won't be. Because even going forward, if rates drop, we can refinance, so the numbers will always continuously shift. And if there's money paid in, these numbers are fluid. They're not. It's not like you have your car payment and you only pay $150, and I'm being funny now, $150 a month for the next 10 years. It's an always moving number because there are so many scenarios that can play out.
All right.
So if we could, since we're talking a lot about this, if we could just put Brian's slides up that he created, just because we're talking, that now seems to be the high-end cost. I don't know if the project is 150, if the project is 135, it's a different set of expenses, correct? People don't even know.
What are we talking about right
Brian's,
now?
can we put Brian's slides up?
What slides?
Before we do that, I have a question. I would love to have that happen, but I do have a question for what this is a curiosity question, and you're the lucky finance director to field it, because I've seen it year over year, and I'm just curiosity factor. We're discussing in our budget subcommittee meeting yesterday. On page 11, when you show all funds budgeted, I'm curious why with the school fund, and I'm sure this also includes the general fund, why it's the 62 million number and not the $55 million property tax transfer, because the difference there doesn't come from the taxpayer or the town of South Kingstown. It comes from other sources. So I'm just curious why that gets included in our municipal budget.
Sure. And within each of these funds, there are, for example, the first one, the general fund, $32,539,000. Of that $32 million, approximately $19 million is from the tax transfer. So a lot of these funds have funds supporting it that is not related to the tax transfer.
I have one question. Jim, we had talked on Monday about, I asked what the cost of the school project would be at a 35% reimbursement rate. Did you have a chance to get that Brian, or?
All right,
Got a
before
lot
we
of
go
papers, just
down
give me 1
this
second.
route,
Okay.
just want to make clear that the item on the agenda tonight is public hearing related to the adoption of the preliminary budget that we adopted on March 18th. So it does not contain broad information to include the fiscal impact 5 years out or 20 years out with respect to the issuance of debt related to the high school project. So,
Yeah, I missed some. I was digging through papers. I think I missed some as well.
all right, the agenda in front of us is limited to public hearing related to the town's preliminary budget fiscal year 24-25 as adopted on March 18 last month. It is limited to that. It does not include discussion related to the fiscal impacts of any issuance of debt related to the high school project. I mean, I don't know if we should go down this route.
I think it's 8:15, we could talk to the public that's here. There's much less of a crowd, so we can see what they want to say, and then we can revisit, take a pause.
All right, let's open it up. This is a public hearing. We've been deliberating on the town council's preliminary budget adoption. So, come on up if anyone wishes to speak. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes, and we just ask to introduce yourself. First come, first serve. Come on up. Doral, come on. You got to come up.
I have a procedural question before the 5 minutes, because isn't the school committee running this meeting tonight?
No.
But we're talking about their budget, right?
Well, we're talking about the town council preliminary adopted budget, which includes the school committee's budget.
So on Monday night, okay. All right, so I sent you guys an email, probably haven't seen it, talking about how does Barrington educate 3,300 students and operate 6 schools with a general fund contribution of $62 million, while we're spending $63 million for 2,350 students. All right, so let's forget about where the money's coming from. What I have here tonight is some ideas of where you could save money in the future. Let's start with expenditures. Employee compensation, we have a ratio of 5.9 students per employee. That's a very, very low number. 5 years ago, before the pandemic, it was 6.5. During the pandemic, FTEs were kept to help with the learning loss, but we're past the pandemic now. So that ratio number needs to come up. Let's get it back to 6.5 maybe by the time the high school opens. Out-of-district tuition. Out-of-district tuition, we're going to be spending over $5 million next year. On the income side, if you look at the school's budget, they have $170,000 coming in, estimated $5 million going out. The only thing that's going to change that is to build a new high school. There are more students in this town that many people realize. This year, for instance, there are 243 high school students that live in South Kingstown that go to either parochial schools or independent schools. 250. That's besides the 102 we have going to other public high schools. I'm sorry, we have the 141 students going to parochial and Catholic schools and 102 to CTE, for a total of 243 students that are going to high schools other than South Kingstown. So that's but all those students that are going to independent schools or parochial schools, their parents are actually paying the tuition for their students to go there. This new high school opens up, hopefully, That'll be reversed to some extent. For every 50 students that come here, and maybe we'll attract students from other districts, that's $1 million. Student transportation. This town needs to get into the bus business by the year 2030. The federal government in the state of Rhode Island has mandated that by 2035 or 20 now, maybe down to 2032, vehicles sold in the state are supposed to be powered by electricity. We need to start a fund. This is where that $1 million that they have this year. This is the year that you, as a town council, needs to start a fund to be kept on the municipal side of $1 million a year for the next 5 years to get into the electric bus business. If you do that, this coming year's budget for transportation for South Kingstown is $6 million. It's going up 4% a year. By the end of this decade, it'll be over $7 million. If you own your own buses and hire your own drivers and your own monitors, you can cut that. I can guarantee you, you will cut that number in half. But what you need is the seed money. You need like $5 million in an account. So then that $5 million plus what you would normally pay for that next year, which is going to be like $7 million, that's $12 million. That $12 million will buy all your buses. It'll pay for all your people. And from then on forward, you're going to be saving $3 to maybe $4 million a year. Now there's one revenue stream. The revenue stream, God, I hate this.
Can you be concise, Thorold? We'll let you come back up.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else wish to speak?
Jim O'Neill, Wakefield. I mentioned to Mr. Kilpatrick tonight what Kate just brought up. I thought we were going to be looking at the property tax school budget tonight. Instead, we're looking at the school fund, which, as she mentioned, is $6.5 million of what the property taxpayers here are not involved with. That money comes from mainly state aid to education. That's where all the action is in the $56 million budget. So obviously, I can't find and won't be able to see in time any of the changes. Good to hear tonight that there are some ideas to finding money, using money where we can. And when I was on the council, the first 12 years, we spent 100% of operating surpluses for the next year, operating fund. Never did it on capital until things got bad after the recession. And we had a contract to the school committee that never more than a third would be used of the undesignated fund balance in the following year. And then finally, in the years recently, we're using a huge chunk to keep up with our school facility needs. So thinking about finding money, I look back in the last 5 years here of the level funded budgets we've had to go through. And that's only been possible with steep enrollment declines, closing schools, federal rescue funds, but yet the budget remains flat. And something's got to give here, because we've got about $7 million of new debt coming at us in about 4 years' time with the bond offering. Plus maybe we'll have 3% of town and operating costs along with the school committee. But what I'd like to have us look at, and what I've brought up many times, I just don't think we're fighting hard enough for our taxpayers' money that the state of Rhode Island has. Odds and ends for you. Curtis Corner School, is that worth $1 to $2 million to sell to a developer rather than spending $2 million to demolish it? That could be $4 million for us. Why don't we make a deal with the YMCA for the property up there to at least put the football field, the track up there, if not another school? Why shouldn't that be the campus district? There just seems to be no discussion on this, or at least that I've been involved with.
You've gone over the 32 million for schools. I don't understand the revolving fund. I know there are a lot of huge ticket items in there. I'll leave that up to those of you who know what the state's going to reimburse to the town. A couple things you should keep in mind here. I'm almost done. Westerly has a $9 billion, and I should have started looking these things up earlier. I just looked at it today because of a real estate deal. $9 billion total value that they have. We're $7 billion. But they get $8.5 million from the state of Rhode Island for state aid. There is $1.2 billion of state aid this year. You can look it up. I've got the paperwork. South Kingstown receives 0.4%, 5.6 million dollars. Yet our taxpayers are coughing up, probably to the tune of $140, $150 million to the $4.5 billion the state collects. I wanted to bring up economies of scale. I brought this up before. If we've got 22 kids in a classroom, or whether it's out of district, one more kid's added, why is that child $21,000? If we did it in our own school here, probably be no financial cost, unless an exceedingly development issue, learning disability, that might cost more. But think about that. There are no economies of scale. We could save $1 million, $1.5 million for out-of-district folks if that last child out of 50 to Cheraho only cost $1,000. Why is that last child filling a classroom? Why does he cost, or she cost $21,000? This is insane. So economies of scale there. And another thing we need to do, we need equalization of transportation costs. Those school districts that are not involved in the bus business, we should have an average we look at around the state. Wright should really look at that. In large geographical areas like we have, we should be, above the average, then reimbursed. Those below to catch up to that. That really only makes sense, but to pay the penalties we've paid in transportation costs for many years now, it's just incredible. So lastly, then I'll leave. In the end, I think what you've got to explain a little better to all of our taxpayers with the bond issue and what's going to happen next fall when the budget comes up again. If the bond's successful at that time with no new debt, schools are going to control 94% of our debt, 94, and 73% of the property tax, the operations. I just hope there's going to be room for the rest of the community folks to find something to suggest spending money on. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. Go ahead.
Jim, can you share where you got that 0.4% figure?
1.2 billion, if somebody's got a calculator out here.
No,
1.2 billion, 5.5 million we get. I think that's 0.4%. Could somebody?
I'm just wondering where you got it from.
From the state aid, the fiscal 25. I do have a copy of that if you want to see it afterwards, but it's 1.19.
And for what it's worth, I don't disagree with you about us getting shortchanged in state aid. I've talked to every member of our delegation. They've tried to argue, especially for the transportation, and the politics of the General Assembly is we're not going to get that.
And I don't disagree. That's what we hear every year. I just don't know if somebody angered somebody up there somewhere. It doesn't make sense. We just are really giving the wrong end of this. Okay, but thank you for acknowledging that.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim, before you go away, so Curtis Corner, where the school is the way I understand it, the athletic fields are going to take some of the space, so that's why that property couldn't be sold because they're using it for the athletics. And then you mentioned the Y, and the Y is not presently for sale. They weren't, so you can't relocate to something that's not owned.
But it seems to me, if we're spending this money on the school building, why in the world wouldn't we look at the fact that they've got a 10-plus acre field next to YMCA, which we sold to them years ago? Why wouldn't we have either a joint or buy that? Right. And at least get the athletic facilities in there, because that is a campus, that whole Broad Rock area.
The school building committee did look at that.
Right.
Kate?
We explored it. Mr. Manny actually had a meeting with the board of directors,
Yep.
I believe, or the president of the Y. It was explored in detail.
So, and then to go back, because a lot of people ask about South Road School and like why it's still empty. So we are in the process of doing an assessment of the building and the hazardous materials and all of those things. And we've talked at the council. My answer, the shortest answer is, we are using it to hopefully solve another problem about housing. So the idea and the goal of the South Road site is to have starter homes, smaller homes, fill a gap that's missing in our community. And so in order to control that change, you can't just sell it like a capitalist. It's like we were going to just offload it to the highest bidder. $10 million homes would go there versus smaller starter homes that fill the gap of all of us talking about our friends' kids can't live here, young people can't buy here, you can't be a police officer or a nurse. So to solve another problem, which we hear all the time about housing that's affordable, we kind of didn't create the most capital for the bond. That's the way I feel like the five of us, even if Greg wasn't here, we kind of went in that direction.
But I'm just trying to keep it school to school, students to students.
Right.
I don't really think that's part of the zoning area behind the YMCA. And school is Curtis Corner. I believe there is a reason to pursue something like that. But I would hate to see a developer pay $1 or $2 million for a major part of Curtis Corner, and we not use that savings. Why not move up there? I know the executive director retired from the YMCA or covering that, and maybe, all they're talking about is doing lacrosse fields up there next to the YMCA. Why in the world not put the football and the track field and the field house in there? So anyway, those are my thoughts. School to school.
Yep.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Good evening, Laura Urban. I live in Kingston. So we do have programs for low-income elderly, tax abatement, and veterans. Is that right? Okay. This certainly doesn't address all the need, but it's certainly a good start. And I hear a lot of the dynamic about people on fixed incomes, and it seems like people on the low-income side of the spectrum could potentially be served by that program, but I don't know all the details. I'm concerned that other folks on the high income end of the spectrum, and in particular, we have some very valuable coastal real estate around here. I'm concerned that I'm hearing that people can't pay for something, but in reality, maybe they just don't want to. Back to the slides. I think it's pretty wild that we only require 200 signatures, which is less than 1% of our population, to hold a special election for a budget referendum. That really caught us off guard last year. Most people signing probably were not studying the budgets as well as we do. I mean, I don't fully understand them, but somebody walking down Main Street probably isn't paying as close attention. We also didn't get any mail for that election. So that came up real fast. It was a real scramble, and it was a real it was a real time sink, to be honest, for a lot of folks in town. I know that was a smaller budget item, but it seems like if we're going to send mail for special elections, it should be consistent across them. Part of the school surplus, if I understand correctly, Ryan, is you said you're understaffed. You couldn't fill some staff roles. I know from personal experience, we have trouble at West Kingston staffing enough TAs to safely manage recess. Recess is super important. Kids need to be physically active in order to sit and learn for the rest of the day. This is not a critique of anyone managing our schools. I think you guys are amazing, and I'm so happy to have you. I'm just saying, I hear so much about how we're overstaffed and the ratios, but from my perspective, I'm seeing a strain on our staff. And some really serious issues with our kids and their state of social and emotional health right now. So that's who I'm here to speak for, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else wish to speak?
Brett Harrington, Wakefield. 73.11% going to the school department operations. That's what I'm looking at. I'm not necessarily against the new school, but I need to see enrollment going up, guys. I can't see it keep dropping. And what I'm seeing is what I know is, and I probably said this to you before, I've lived in this state my entire life. This is where I wanted to be. This is where I wanted to raise my kids. Couldn't afford the housing here. And it hasn't changed, it's gotten worse, okay? So I don't see, take your kids, half the kids that are going out to the other schools, bring them back. I just don't see the numbers going up. And when I mean up, I mean when I went to Coventry High School, just in the high school alone, there was 1,800 of us. That was just the high school. And that count just continues to grow because the housing costs are where, new families can afford to be. It doesn't exist out here. So, it's just a huge number to be going in. And I understand, it's operating, it's benefits, there's a lot of money. There's got to be a way that you guys can look at the operating costs, look down the road to AI to help out the schools. You know what I mean? This is what the general public now is looking at. We're all seeing artificial intelligence drop our pays, eliminate jobs. We all like to have high paying jobs, but it's time that we all absorb some of this because the taxpayers there are going to be absorbing it, and this is what we're going to be looking at is, can we afford to stay in this town, or do we have to leave it because we're just being taxed? And yes, some people do make a lot of money, but then there are a lot that don't. And when it comes to freezing your taxes, that's all on a basis of, what you have is investments and all that stuff. So, and as we know, Social Security and all that might not be there. Right now they're saying it won't be around in, 2035, it'll be gone. So, I don't know, something to think about, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, come on up, Dorald.
So I'm the tax assessor for the Kingston Fire District. It's my last year, 16 years, it's enough. I'm pretty sure we were told about a month ago that the state of Rhode Island is no longer going to collect taxes on tangible property. Have you heard anything about that?
There's going to be an exemption for, our tax assessor could speak to this much better than I, but there's going to be an exemption for tangible properties, I believe, any that are under 50,000.
Okay. That's pretty much most of them.
Yes,
okay.
For this town, yes.
I think it would be good if Mr. Kilpatrick could tell the community what CIP projects are going to be taken care of with the $2 million of ESSER 3 funds. I think it would be quite an eye-opener because it's quite a nice list.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Beasley. So first we have the West Kingston and Matunic Elementary School playgrounds at about $300,000, $150 apiece, give or take. We have the Peacedale Elementary School HVAC system at about $54,000. We also are going to replace the basement level carpeting with some tile in Peacedale at $60,000. We're going to replace one of the two boilers at Broad Rock Middle School, potentially two, if that's needed, at $90,000. And then a district-wide HVAC computer upgrade and some HVAC filters at about $90,000. So the total of all those projects is $594,000, roughly.
All right.
$594,000, correct.
But didn't you say it was $2 million in ESSER funds?
That's our total allocation, but
Oh,
correct.
so is that the end? Sorry, Dorald, I'm taking your time. That's
Sorry.
It's $2 million, we have about $500,000 left?
$500,000 and $594,000 going towards capital specifically. So our total allocation was about $2.9 million. We have about $640,000 left unspent.
Okay, thank you.
All right. There are people, so 35% of the people that are eligible to vote between now and May 7th are 65 and older in South Kingstown. It's the highest demographic increase since 2010 to 2020. That demographic went up, I believe, 45%. There are some of those people who live on their Social Security checks. The average Social Security check, monthly check in the United States, is $1,505. That's equal to $18,060 a year. Some of those people, I'm sure there are a few of those people, probably purchased their homes 50 or 60 years ago that are paying taxes. I'm hoping that your abatements, that your annual abatements that you give for lower income people, take care of those people, because otherwise they could be in a hurt. So I want to get back to my thing here to finish it off. So the next thing was revenue. Oh no, actually the next thing was, I just want to let you know how many students we have in this town actually. So the total district residency enrollment, so that's the students that are in our schools and the ones that go to other schools, is this year is 2,603 students. We also have about 82 students homeschooled. So that's total district residency and homeschool of 2,685. We have 399 students in South Kingstown go to independent or Catholic schools. So that's a total town enrollment of 3,084 students. That's, so we have, the students are here. All right, so now let's go to the revenue. On the revenue side, as Mr. O'Neill mentioned, the town of South Kingstown is getting, I can't use the word I want to say here, but we're getting the short end of the stick here, okay? So I've sent you guys this, you'll see it in an email tonight. It's actually a list starting back in 2008 of how much South Kingstown and all the rest of the school districts in this town have gotten. In 2008, South Kingstown got $10 million a year. The year before the hold harmless money came in, which I think was 2024, in 2023, we got $5 million. So we lost 50% of what we had in 2008 till 2023. That's 15 years. We lost 50%. That's the highest drop of any town in Rhode Island. Now, part of that's the fact that we've lost 2,000 students since there. So there is a correlation. But what's happened with the way the funding formula has been tweaked is they now take into account the total value of real estate in a community as part of their calculation. And where do you see all the districts getting less money? It's the coastal communities. It's not our fault that we're a coastal community. So when I hear you say that our legislators have tried to help to fix this mess, I don't see I don't see why they can't go back and find out what's going on with that, because to me it seems we're getting messed up. Okay, here's my last thing.
All right, Doyle, you're a bit over. Give me some rope.
I know. If this bond passes, you may not see me again. So keep your fingers crossed. All right, so artificial intelligence, it's here. It's going to take over many of the things we take for granted today. The one thing that this district could do, the one thing they could do this year, starting in this September, to improve student performance, not just on assessment tests, but completely, would be to bring ConMIGO, which is a form of it's a ChatGPT combination with the Khan Academy. The software's been out for like 18 months now. It's been improved. It's being improved constantly. The NEA, as a matter of fact, the NEA in February and March had a series of webinars talking about how AI can help teachers to improve students' outcomes. Because a teacher, if a student has this software, which is $35 per student, so if you put it into our 5th and 6th grades in September, that's about less than 400 students. That's like $12,000 investment. What it does is it gives each student like their own tutor. So that means in a classroom with all different kinds of capabilities of your student body, each student gets the tutor that matches up with their capability.
All right, Doyle, we're going very far here.
If you did that in 5th and 6th grade this year, and then next year, you put it in 7th and 4th, and the 3rd year, you put it in 8th and 3rd, that would take care of your entire school grade level that takes the RICAS test. And the students that are in 8th grade 3 years from now, the next year, they would be going to the new high school, which would have AI online from day one. To me, it's a no-brainer. I hope to see it on in the near future, on a school committee calendar.
All right. Thank you, Doral. Okay. That's going to bring us to the end here. Great meeting, great collaboration. I feel really good about all this. Let's keep this going as we move forward. Thank you to staff. Everyone's doing a great job. Let's keep moving forward. Good.
I've got one more.
Me too.
A little while ago, you had figured, I'm not sure who, probably Ryan, figured approximately $3.6 million in savings using maintenance of effort. It was joint budget work session, December 20th, 2023.
You got to give me a little more context. I'm sorry. Savings on maintenance of effort?
Yeah,
for
maintenance of
expenses?
effort, and it shows how one figures it out, which I didn't know before, but it comes to $3,500,000.
Oh, so, I'm sorry. So you're talking about funding on a per pupil basis? Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Are you guys trying to work to get to that point? I mean, I'm not sure what the purpose of that was. Was that your goal to?
So just to clarify, that was a slide presented by the town staff to potentially discuss amongst the council if that was a viable possibility. I don't think there was any action taken on that, and as far as I know, that's not any strategy that we're pursuing currently. So I don't want to speak out of turn. So
And to follow up on that was a conversation that was had in this chambers a year ago, and I carried it forward for this year's discussion within the March document.
So just the public service announcement, early voting on the special election, bond vote began today. You can vote in the garage at town hall, 8:30 to 4:30, every weekday until the day before the bond. So on Monday, it closes at 4. You can vote if you need more information. There's information on the town website. There's information on skschoolproject.com. I don't want anyone to say, I had no idea, so I'm going to keep on saying it until May 7th and every opportunity.
Can I chime in on that as well? Between Studio Jade, Luke Murray, Chris Spiegel, and Brian Mahoney, we are delivering boards that basically say the same thing that Deb is just saying. We have one up in the Wakefield Mall. We have a few private businesses that have agreed to put them up. There are a number of private businesses, I'm not going to name their names because it is up to them whether they want them or not. A few people asked, why don't you put a board here? And they said, no, thank you, because that's not what they're in the business for. But we're trying very hard to get these big boards, just like you see outside the chambers here, and they're being placed all around town as well.
And the school building committee is doing a second workshop
Forum,
session
yes.
Saturday 9 to 12
At
back
the
at
high
the
school.
cafeteria.
Yes.
Saturday morning, 9 o'clock at the high school cafeteria.
Thank you.
And just for a final thing, are Brian's slides about the tax implications easily accessible and front and center on the webpage of the town? Can you pull up, do you have a second to pull up the webpage? Do you have it connected here? I just want people to know where to go to look for more information.
So on the town website, if you look right at the top, the emergency alert, if you click on the read on for the school facilities bond referendum, if you click on that, that brings you right to the link. And you'll get the voter information, and you also get, I'm sorry, along the side here, you get voter information, financial information. I'll click on each so you can see it, but on the voter information, you get the polling places. And to back it up, on the financial side, you get the slides. So there are the assumptions, the first slide with bond only, the second slide with bond and town growth of 1.7%, and then the other slide that's been, was discussed at the last community forum. And then finally, the last item, the project information, and this goes into the actual school itself.
Thank you. I'm sure this was a lot of work. I appreciate it.
All right. Anything further? Oh, you want to say something? Come on up.
Maggie Martin, Wakefield. I was waiting for the discussion on voting about the content of the postcard. Was that something that was happening? I know you decided on a postcard, but I thought you were going to vote on the content.
No, that's not on this agenda.
So what's...
We
talked
already
about-
voted on that.
Yeah, on Monday.
Yeah, I think I may have misspoken. So basically, we all voted last night on the postcard, and then we each received a copy of it, and we had the opportunity to send in our remarks on the postcard.
I thought it was going to be taken up tonight, the verbiage.
Well, it's not on the agenda. So if it were to be, it would be on the agenda.
I mean, I saw it on Patty's Facebook that it was going to be talked about tonight, so, and you're a councilwoman, so I thought it was still undetermined, hasn't...
So
Yeah.
can we discuss the writing on it, or?
All right, well, first off, this is not on the agenda. So we'd have to add it to the agenda for discussion purposes only.
Motion to
And-
add it to the agenda.
Second.
All right, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. Jim, walk us through what's going on here.
I thought it was decided Monday night, the content, the objectivity of it, and how it would be sent out. And I believe it went off to the printer today, correct? For disbursement next week. So, yesterday. So basically, it was, as I remember the council meeting Monday, the meeting we had, the objectivity was first and foremost as to what would go on it. So basically, it states that there's a $150 million bond. Here's the date. Here's your polling place. Here's the where you can vote. We had our solicitor look at it, the content, to make sure it was objective, and he approved it as it stood. But but we also went to the Board of Elections.
Canvassers.
Board of Canvassers, I'm sorry, Board of Canvassers here at Town Hall, and they had to approve it, that they could approve it because, and Susan is the subject matter expert on this, because for that return address to say that it had to go before them to be approved, not the Secretary of State. So Susan, did you want to add anything on that?
The postcard, as designed, is very similar to what went out when we sent out redistricting notices in 2022. It is marked as election mail. It is a return address of the Board of Canvassers. It has factual information only on the bond question, the bond date, and how to vote, and where to get information on the town website or by calling the town clerk's office. I had sent to you each the content that was going on the backside. I asked if you had any comments on it to send them back to the town manager by the next morning so that we could get it to the printer, because to send out 11,000 notices is going to take some time in order to get it out as quickly as possible. Since we didn't hear back from anyone with comments or suggestions for changing it, we went forward with sending the print job.
I would also like to note that that Susan did email us that, and then Jim immediately texted all of us asking us to check our email and to respond back by 10 a.m. So,
Yeah, I was under the assumption we were discussing the verbiage tonight.
So I just think that the most important thing we as elected officials is we present the objective information so that people can go and get more information and make a decision. I think when we start to step in one side or the other, we all remember what it was like in 2020. If you were here and paying attention, you didn't, 2021 was divisive, it was angry, it shouldn't be that way. People need to decide what they want to do. It's their money in their pocket. If they want to approve the bond and have a new high school, vote that way. If you don't want the project and you don't want the tax increase, then don't vote for the bond.
Right.
What everyone does, we don't know everybody's situations and what they're planning for, spending, and what they have, what they don't have. That's a very personal decision. I think we need to come as elected officials and just present the information, show them where to find it. Everybody has some responsibility to do their homework. And so I feel the postcard to me is very bland and vanilla, but that's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to tell me what to do, vote this way or that way. And so while people might want it to say this or that, we would spend more time arguing about the colon, the semicolon, the comma, and that's not the job. We're just supposed to put a notice out that we are having a special election. I'm very thankful that you did it so quickly. And I appreciate that it's vanilla because it's just what it's supposed to be. Go and get the information and go and vote. That's it. We don't want.
I hope that.
We don't want to be.
Yeah,
We don't want.
I know you're by the facts and you just want it to be unbiased or as much as possible. But it just is. I just was hoping to confirm and have everyone on the council review it. It seemed like it was rushed. It was rushed, especially because the last slide was elected not to be added about the payoff of the bond debt and having removed the annual educational increases, which shows the full impact of the bond. So just wanted to make sure that the mailer that's sent out is complete and shows the entire cost of the bond.
So
There's no mailer. I don't like to use
it's a postcard?
Yeah,
It's
the
not a
mailer.
flyer?
The mailer.
That's
The
what I
mailer.
mean.
The word mailer is very triggering from 2021. So I'm not gonna. I'm gonna say notice. So the notice does tell you to go to the town website or the clerk's office. I feel like anything we created on a postcard is gonna have the smallest font. No one would read it.
Yeah.
It does link right to the slides. if you go to where Brian
But the
said.
last slide is actually not posted, right?
Yeah,
Total cost.
because we
Because we-
voted as a council not to portray that because we didn't believe in the numbers reflected there.
You
but
didn't
that-
think there would be an increase every year.
We're not going to hash this out now. We've hashed this out several times. We've made our feelings clear on the record as to what we think related to that slide. You can go back and look if you wish as to our thoughts there. We're not going to get into it now. We've had several discussions about that. But the postcard does not include financial information. It includes references to website where that information can be found.
Right, but one of the slides is missing from the site, so that's why I was just
All
concerned
right,
that we
we're
haven't
not going to
confirmed,
continue to
but-
hash this. We've already
Okay.
decided that. So the postcard has been authorized by us. It's already been sent out.
Okay.
It's in the process of
Still a
going
little
out.
concerning
It's
that
neutral as it
one
can.
of your
It
members
references
didn't
the
even
slide.
know. Yeah.
You can disagree with us. That's fine. This is democracy.
Yep.
But that brings us to the end here. All right, anything further?
I'm sorry that we couldn't do what you wanted but I do think the postcard is a fair, objective information push.
Right, no, I hope it is. I just, like Greg was under the impression that we were talking about it tonight still, and I saw Patty's post earlier today, so I thought that it was going to be discussed in public this evening about exactly the content, but hopefully it is just the facts, and it's not going to say $318 and that's it.
It doesn't say
Yeah.
that.
It doesn't say anything
It doesn't
on it.
say
It's
anything
just
other than
very boring and
I was gonna
straightforward.
I can print it out right here if
Alright.
you want to wait. So it's fine.
Yeah.
Would you like
All
a
right. We can
copy?
print it out for you if you'd like to. You can see it, do what you want with it. You should get one in the mail as well. But if there's nothing further.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we got a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, this meeting is over.